Welcome back to this channel. This is Akash. I host Business Nerd Podcast and you're watching Business Nerd Podcast Stock Market Series. This series is primarily for people who are in the stock markets. I also wanted to do a lot of solo podcasts for this channel so that I can help people who are in the stock markets. That is my field. I also host Business Nerd Podcasts where I invite a lot of guests from different industries. They share their stories to help you guys build your business. Now in this episode, I started a new series which is Stock Market Series. I wanted to talk about how I invest, how I think in terms of stock markets and what is my process, my flow, everything related to the stock markets and my forte. So I wanted to share that in this podcast. So I thought of doing a lot of solo podcasts. So I'm trying to make content around those topics. I'll cover a lot of current market topics. I'll also cover news that's trending in the market that may affect the markets. And then I'll nail down how I use that news to search for stocks in different segments. So this is going to be very engaging. It's not just going to be you watching this screen or listening to me passively and then doing your work. You'll have to actively look at how I search for things with a certain news, with certain kind of data that I've found. So it's going to be very engaging. This is kind of a new thing that I'm trying. So let's get right into it. So the first topic that I want to touch upon, which is kind of very hot in the market, which is Bajaj Housing Finance. It's coming out with its IPO. I'm pretty confident it's going to be very successful. The grey market premium is, I think, around 60-70 rupees, which is sort of 100%. So it's going to be a very successful IPO. But let me tell you why. Before I even tell you what I'm going to do with the IPO, whether I'm going to apply or if I'm not going to apply. So let me just give you some idea of how I think of the management, which is Bajaj. So if you haven't watched any of my content, so I'm a big believer of betting on the jockey, not the horse. There are uncountable NBFCs in the Indian markets, right? What makes Bajaj Housing Finance much better than its peers? Because there are a lot of companies in the Indian markets. Why Bajaj Housing Finance? First thing is the management credibility. I've never found a management in the Indian markets that has always strived to achieve excellence in all fronts, like business, that's credibility, the reputation, their brand. So Bajaj has all those elements, and I think in the long run, this is going to be the next sort of elites. The Bajaj Group is already renowned. There are a lot of companies, they've made huge wealth for investors in Bajaj Finance, Bajaj Finserv, then Bajaj Auto, Bajaj Holdings, which has recently run up. So it's not that the management cannot deliver. They have a new business that's going to be listed, which is Bajaj Housing Finance. And I think this is going to be the next multi-bagger stock in the long run. So I'm very bullish on Bajaj Group as whole, and I'm also very bullish on Bajaj Housing Finance. Now that's just a plain vanilla statement. You'll have to dig in a lot of data, but this video is not for that. I don't want to talk about just the IPOs. I also want to touch upon how I think on news flow as well. For people who are interested in the IPO, let's get to my screen. So this is the DRHP that Bajaj Housing Finance has filed. So this is what you should be looking at when you are bidding for Bajaj Housing Finance IPO. Now, if you're a shareholder, if you hold one share of Bajaj Finserv or Bajaj Finance, you can apply for two applications, which is one is shareholder category, the other is retail, SHNI, BHNI, or individual, in the normal category. So there are two ways that you can apply. If you want to apply in the shareholder category, and even in the shareholder category, if you want to apply about 2 lakhs, then you can also apply for the other retail category, which is under 2 lakhs in the normal category. Now, if you're applying in the shareholder category, which is below 2 lakhs, then you can apply for general category about 2 lakhs. So that's just the statement that it is shown in this DRHP. Look it up. Where I'm at is page number 433 on the DRHP of this IPO. I'll share this link in the description. So this is what the current IPO stands for, and I'm really excited for this IPO. It's going to be phenomenal, and I'm very looking forward to this one. Now, the second one is like the retail segment's IPO. Like if you have checked the current trends, you would have seen retail segment is rising continuously. Like every retail stock is rising. Spencer Retail, which recently run up, let me just pull it up. It's a Sanjeev Goenka company, Spencer Retail. The stock has run up a lot in the last 1 week. You can see in the last 1 month, it has gone up from 83 rupees till 110, which is like a really good growth if in a short period of time. So retail is doing really well. Trent is the dominant player in retail right now. In the last 1 month, it has gone up from 4,000 to not in the last 6 months. From the last 1 month, it has gone up from 5,200 to 7,000. So like it is like the stock is growing every month, every quarter, and it is generating phenomenal returns for investors. So retail is one segment which is trending in the market. So retail is one of those stories that will still continue to grow despite a lot of skepticism from investors that retail is priced in, there is no growth, rural demand is not coming, the rural demand is slow. I'd argue that rural demand is doing really well because the data says so. Urban demand maybe would be like flattish at this point, but rural demand is really good. Trend focuses on like medium budget to lower budget people, so that's really good for them, and it provides that aspirational quality for them. So Trent is one of those sectors. The second one is ABFRL. So you could have seen Aditya Birla Fashion, which is one of those stories where they are going through a demerger process. So that will also do good in the retail category. So check it out. Like retail is one segment that's going to do well in this current market. I also show which retail IPO is coming out right now, which is Baazar style retail, right? You can see the premium right now in the gray market is 32%, which is great, like good listing gain. Again, quick disclaimer, I'm not promoting any stock. I'm not sharing that you should buy this, you should buy that. Full disclosure, I don't recommend any stocks. I'm not SEBI registered. I am only sharing my process of how I would search for a stock based on a news. This is just me sharing my experience of investing. I don't have any sort of financial product to sell you guys. So this is just me sharing my experience of investing in the stock markets. With that said, let's move on. We covered Bajaj Housing Finance. We covered retail. Now, Fintech, if you have been watching the news, if you've been reading the news, you would have seen Fintech is growing really well in the Indian markets, right? Overall Indian markets, Fintech is growing. Even though Paytm reported bad results, Paytm stock went up. So that's one of those stories when the whole market is bullish, even the stocks that are not performing well are doing well, right? In the past, I have been talking about Paytm. I've shared that the stock is undervalued, but then they had regulatory issues. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know anything about Paytm, but in the last 1 month, the stock has run up from 488 till 620, which is good. Like the returns are good. There is no doubt about it. So again, let's take a step back. Fintech is trending. My understanding would be, okay, which stock is in the Fintech category that's going to grow? The first one that comes to my mind is Paytm. There are other stocks as well, like we'll have to look into it. So let's say I don't understand about the stock markets and I want to search for Fintech stocks. So how would I do it? I would go to Google. I would search for Fintech listed companies in India. So you can see there's the first link. It says Fintech players, 197 communication. There is Suvidha InfoServe, PB Fintech. Now, PB Fintech isn't like sort of a fintech player, but it has a website which is Infibeam is one of those companies. Now, so yeah, these are the companies that you would look at. So you can see Paytm is the first one that comes to the list. So fintech was trending, and that's why all these stocks have gone up. There could be other reasons. I'll have to dig deeper, but by and large, when there's a news, something like this, like there's fintech, something that's trending, you can look it up, like let's just look at, even if we didn't know anything about fintech, so what I would do is Fintech conference. It was there in India recently. So let's go to news tab. There's a first commentary from the RBI governor. It says we are now focusing on making UPI and RuPay truly global. So it makes sense that they are going in that direction. So the fintech stocks would be trending. So you can see RuPay is going to be global. They're saying UPI and RuPay will be global. All these companies will grow if all these two technologies, which is RuPay and UPI, goes global. Now that is just my understanding of how I would look at this news, and I would play it for a trade. I don't know about investments, but these are sort of like trade ideas. Specifically, all these stocks like Paytm, all these stocks that have crashed because of business trends, you can sort of trade into them, but still there's a risk involved. Look into it. I would look at Paytm as a purely trade play at this point. I'll have to dig deeper, understand its financials to understand if it's worth investing in at this moment for me. Second is like solar. Now this is a very interesting play. Like solar has been trending for a very, very long time. If you're an investor in the Indian stock markets, you would have seen companies like Waaree Renewables, Adani Power, Tata Power, and like so many renewable companies, solar companies that have done phenomenally well. Like take an example of Waaree Renewables, right? Stock has like generated massive wealth. The stock has gone up from in December of 2022 it was 100 rupees. It made a high of 2700. So that's 27 times in a short span of time, which is amazing. Like you can't have such growth in any sort of segment. But how do you identify? Like you can't know all these, you can't find these stocks when it's actually happening. Like right now there'll be some companies that gain that you and I are not aware of. Like we'll only understand it in hindsight. How do you identify? Let's take an example of solar. So right now, this company which is coming out with an IPO, which is going to list tomorrow, by the way. Premier Energies is going to list tomorrow. So how do you know if it is going to like do well, if it is going to like grow really well in the next, I don't know, 5, 6, 10 years? So I would look at their website, I would look at their business. So let's just open their statement. Like what's their revenues like? So it's 1668 crores in the current year. Last year in the financial year, they did about 3200 odd crores of revenue and 231 crores of profits, which is really, really great. Like it's a big company. They're going to command high valuation. And if you got the allotment, like it's really good. You can check their like financials. Most of them are positive, and they have a strong ROC, like strong return on capitals, they're strong ROEs, margins are good, debt to equity ratio is a tad bit high, right? 2.18 is a tad bit high, but you'll have to search for like what the management has to say on that. So far, I'm happy with this current listing, this current IPO. And this is not one of those SME companies that has formed their business in the last 4 or 5 years and then they decided to come up. So SME is kind of gaining a bad rep in this current market, because in the last 2 days you'd have heard news of a company, SME company that has 2 Yamaha showrooms that was trying to raise 31 crores and they received bids of 2700 crores. So there's a kind of bad rep in that SME market. Try to stay away from it. I'm not actively participating in SME segment. So I'm only looking at main board IPOs. So look at those companies, and like this is one of them. This is one of those companies that is going to do really well in like a very long time. So solar is one of those themes that you should look at. This listing will impact a lot of solar companies, and there will be some sort of valuation like balancing. If some solar company is not priced in according to this, there will be some sort of balancing in that category. So check it out. I would definitely want to participate in some solar stocks in the near term, at least for a trade, because this IPO will impact those companies. Now, the last one is kind of very interesting. power transmission. Power transmission, there was a news from the Gujarat government. Let me just pull it up. So how do you search for companies in this segment? Let's just read this article, which says National Committee for Transmission recommends project worth 22,540 crores for Power Ministry's approval. So it has recommended these projects. We still need to have a final approval on this, but how do you stay on your toes when you know that something's going to happen in this sector, and once you have a final trigger, you jump in before that? And like there would be a secondary news flow that comes in this sector. I'm pretty sure that there would be some small cap company that would generate 50-60% profits from this news flow. So how do you actually search for it? I haven't done any research in this. This would be me doing it for the first time to help you guys how I do it, how I would do it, and like think about narrowing down our investments. How do you actually connect that news flow to a stock? That's a very big thing to look at, because that takes a lot of work, first of all, but you also have to understand that it's not too difficult. You can do it by yourself if you understand nuances in that news. So let's just read into it. The National Committee for Transmission has recommended transmission projects worth this. It's a significant push towards enhancing India's power infrastructure. Among the key proposals are two major transmission initiatives in Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. So we know that two states are involved. One is Gujarat and second is Tamil Nadu, each estimated to cost around 6,000 crores. These projects are aimed at integrating the initial offshore wind projects. So we have one keyword, which is wind projects. So it'd be some wind stocks that we need to look at, wind energy stocks. So you can see it clearly says that Adani Transmission is one of the biggest ones. So you can clearly see that Adani Energy Solutions is one of the biggest energy transmission companies in Gujarat. So this is the first company that comes to my mind. Okay, Adani, I need to look at Adani. Is there any other company in the Adani group that you can look at when there's certain news flow? There is another one, which is Gujarat Power Transmission. So is this listed? I don't know. But let's just look at overall transmission companies regardless of their state presence. Transmission companies listed India. So it's Tata Power, CESC, NTPC. Now here's another trigger. When I look at CESC, it reminds me of how RPSG group is trending, because this company is from that group. Now, if you don't know, like that's too difficult for me to explain how you should do it. But CESC is RPSG group. That makes me question, okay, should I look into this one? Let's just see if this stock is doing well. Now, you can look at CESC in the last 1 month. It has gone up from 168 to 208, which is a really good growth, at least for this trade. So let's just connect dots, because this makes this news worthy if you had read it when it came out and you had connected the dots to this stock. The news came out on August 28th, which is very recently, right? And if there's anything else that came out before that, so you can see the news came out on August 28th, which is very recent. So there would be some sort of, the stock has declined after that. So maybe the stock is not relevant for this. So CESC is not one of those companies that you should look at. We don't know as of now, right? So let's just keep searching. Transmission companies in India listed. So SJVN is the next one. Okay, SJVN recently was announced a Navratna status, so that would be another trigger for this stock. So I would definitely look at SJVN, because the stock has corrected recently from 142s and it has entered into a sort of 130-ish territory, and in the last 6 months the stock has not delivered returns. So I would look at SJVN because the news is good. PSU stocks have not performed in the last 3 or 4 months. This could be one of those triggers. We have a positive news flow in the solar category. then it's the renewable segment, then we have our whole this current power news that I said. This could be one trigger that could impact SJVN stock. I would look at SJVN from this current news. There are other companies like Adani Green. Adani Green could be impacted. Tata Power could be impacted. Now, Adani Green could be impacted. In the last 1 month, the stock has not generated any returns. The government has recommended these projects, but we still don't have a final approval on these stocks. We don't have a final approval on these projects. Once it's announced, once it's actually executed, like that's when you jump in, like that's when you hit hard, and then you make returns which are much better than what you get from mutual funds, at least in the short term. Historically, mutual funds are the best. Like in the short term, if you're looking for trade, if you're somebody who's struggling to make returns, like this is how I track news and I connect those dots to the stocks, because equities in general are much better when you look at returns, even for trading purposes, compared to like F&O category or the options. Like I'm not a big fan of trading into options. I don't understand it. I stay away from it. I stick to my strengths, which is understanding businesses, understanding news flow, and then connecting those dots to whichever stocks it applies to. That's how I do it. So this is one of those ways that I do it. Now, these are the current trends in the Indian market. Like what about some news flow that's going to affect Indian markets that comes from the global markets like the US? Now, in the last month, like US reported like bad data when it comes to jobs, and that impacted the whole world. Like there was a market cap erosion of $1.5 trillion in the US market. Everyone believed that we're going to enter into a bear market, but then suddenly US GDP grew from there, and then Nvidia came out with the numbers, and then the whole market was positive from there on. India's GDP numbers came out. Let's just look into it, which isn't good. Like the numbers are not good as expected. The real GDP has slowed in this April to June quarter, right? 6.7. We anticipated a lot more, at least 7 plus. RBI was anticipating a lot more. We might have a negative impact tomorrow because of this data. This is not very small news, by the way. Like it's going to have serious consequences, because then the government will have to go harder in their execution, because US is growing despite all these challenges. Now, these are a few key points that you look at if you anticipate some crashes. So the first one is when I want to search for any kind of news flow, I go to websites like investing.com or Forex Factory, like things of that nature when you look at US markets or global markets. The first article that showed up was top 5 things to watch in the markets in the week ahead. So the first one is non-farm payroll data. That was the first one. This is the first data that impacted in the last month's crash, right? Remember that. Any signs of weakening in this, we're going to see crashes. Then market volatility. Now that's going to affect, obviously, if there's some sort of announcement from Fed, some announcement from like authorities in the US market, we are going to see some impact. Now, we can't predict that, obviously. We just have to track it and then navigate the markets accordingly. Then there's Bank of Canada. Obviously, it's not relevant to the Indian markets, but like now oil prices. Now, this is something that I closely track, because India's imports of crude impact the market, right? Since India is importing from Russia, that's not going to be a big problem as of now. But if crude goes up, there's some sort of global tension, something happens, then one of those theses that I shared, like OMCs, I shared OMCs recently, like 3 sectors that would grow despite all these noise that we have in the global markets, which was like 2 months ago. Like I was factoring in a lot of these political tension, geopolitical tension, a lot of these things were going on at that time. So I looked at 3 sectors that I really liked. One was OMCs, second one was FMCG and engineering R&D, out of which one of them, which is OMCs, that's a very volatile sector. Like look at it, because we may have one exit opportunity. All of them are doing really well, by the way. Like all those themes that I shared, 3 ones, they're doing really well. They've delivered amazing returns in the last 3 months. 20 plus returns actually. Like most of the stocks have delivered 20 plus returns in 3 months, which is amazing. But time to be cautious in those 3 sectors because this directly impacts returns in those in the OMC category. Now China is one of those players where like we have to be afraid, but then right now there is a lot of negative news flow coming from China. Like they're doing this, some days they are doing their policy changes. I don't actively track those news flow, but their market is not that good at this point. So any news flow like government trying to increase their spending to bring back the demand, that could positively impact the market. Like we don't have any sort of negative news flow coming from China, right? In fact, they are the ones who are trying to boost the manufacturing. They're trying to boost a lot of these sectors that's helping the Indian markets, manufacturing, commodities, right? So China is trying to improve. If they see improvement, we see some sort of downstream impacts, which is kind of good, which is not bad. So I don't anticipate any sort of bad thing happening in China. So one thing that I would be cautious of is like any sort of geopolitical tension, like that can impact crude prices. Crude prices can heavily impact the Indian markets, right? So keep a watch on those news flow and like make your decisions accordingly. This is the end of the episode. Like I hope you guys found this useful. This is something that I've been wanting to try. Like I wanted to share how I think, how I read news flow, how I make decisions. I covered a lot of different topics. Leave a comment if you would like me to like dive deeper into one of those topics that you found useful. Let me know in the comments. I would make a second video like kind of this one, and then I'll narrow down how to search from like a broader index of a news flow, like let's say crude. I will search for what are those stocks listed in that, why I like a certain stock, why I don't like this stock. I can even talk about a single stock for an hour, like search for that, but like that takes a lot of time. Let me know if you want me to do that. So you guys learn how to process these news flow, make decisions related to investments, understand how the global markets work, and then make your decisions, navigate accordingly. It's not too complicated as we hear. Like it's really simple. Like you just have to connect the dots. That's what I wanted to do. I hope I covered all those topics, brought you some value, you learned something. So yeah, that's just my way of doing this. Leave a comment, let me know how you found it useful. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, do me a small favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, like those videos. It makes me feel good. I like to do all these things for you guys. Click on the notification button. It'll push those notifications to your feed, and then you don't miss any sort of investing videos, because trust me, I've had like news flows that even a small news flow that I missed out on that has negatively impacted me. And I've had a very minute news flow that came from some Twitter handle, some news article that I actually looked at and I made decisions, and that had a huge impact on my investing like outcomes. All right, let's wrap it up now. I hope you found this useful. I hope you found some value from it and it helps you make wiser investing decisions. I'll see you in the next one. Until next time, peace.